This is Paul Rowady, Senior Analyst at TABB Group, here to talk to you about a recent report we released about OTC interest rate swaps and beyond. This is a fairly fascinating story given how large this market is. At the top level, we're talking about $605 trillion of notional exposure. Now, when you boil that all down, what that really means is about $25 trillion of market exposure and margin or collateral of about $3.7 trillion. So this market, while it appears large or the largest on the surface, it's not quite as large, or it's roughly comparable to equity markets, for instance. Now, the public doesn't understand this market very well, even though there's quite a bit of information out in the public domain. The Bank for International Settlements, ISDA, which is the International Swaps and Derivatives Association, and even the U.S. Office of the Comptroller of the Currency all provide very detailed information about what is going on in these markets, how large they are, how they're broken down between asset class, and rough breakdowns between the different kinds of participants. Despite all this information, the public, the media, and even legislators don't really understand what is going on in these markets. Now, despite all that, the goals for current reforms are quite clear. Minimize counterparty risk as a result of bilateral deals, and enhance market transparency, both in terms of price transparency and position transparency. That said, there are roughly 4 core solution areas, some of which are already out in the public domain and in practice in some cases for several years. The first of which is to enhance price transparency and straight-through processing efficiencies. The second is to maximize the use of central counterparties, otherwise known as CCPs. This is very common in, for instance, equity markets. These are clearing brokers that stand between buyers and sellers of securities. The third of which is to optimize financial counterbalances such that appropriate margin capital is placed to protect the remaining bilateral deals that are not put through a CCP situation. And the fourth of which is to amplify regulatory response tools, which allows regulators and legislators, when market disruptions occur, to be able to assess where the risks are. Now, we've looked at each of these solutions, 2 of which we've drilled down on in the report. The first is the use of CCPs, which frankly is quite prevalent today, even though the debate going on about reforms would suggest otherwise. 25 to 30% of interest rate swaps, which primarily includes dealer-to-dealer transactions, are being cleared today through LCH ClearNet's Swap Clear service in London. This is between banks. This doesn't include dealer-to-end user transactions. In the dealer-to-dealer community, this represents 89% of dealer-to-dealer interest rate swap transactions. Now, the second piece and a big focus of the report is the path to electronic markets. This is where we think that the use of electronic platforms to execute trades is really the missing link in how this market operates. And in order to claim some level of success for the reforms that are being debated, electronic markets are going to have to, and electronic solutions are going to have to adopted quite a bit more than they are today. The adoption, which is really only on the customer side, not on the bank side, is about 5 to 10% of what we call D2C transactions. In the D2D segment, there's virtually no use of electronic solutions other than to type in deal terms after they've been organized and coordinated over the phone. So this is really the main challenge, is getting the dealer-to-dealer community to adopt electronic solutions that will enhance front to back office, straight through processing efficiencies. Now, there's a reason why they haven't adopted these solutions, and that's because they make a lot of money keeping these transactions in a relatively opaque bilateral situation. They make a ton of money here. So in the absence of some sort of mandate to do otherwise, they would likely drag their feet or otherwise try and keep this large segment of the overall OTC derivative market in the use of phones and non-automated solutions. We think that one way to chip away at this is for end users to take the lead in the adoption of electronic platforms like a Bloomberg or a TradeWeb to execute interest rate swaps and other OTC derivative transactions. And that increase in adoption is likely to gradually chip away at the large banks' resolve and begin to get them to foster more adoption. At the end of the day, using electronic platforms is the final piece to complete the reforms. We expect that this could occur over the next 2 to 3 years. For more on this research, go to tabbgroup.com. This is Paul Rowady, Senior Analyst. Thanks for listening.